chapter in a much larger, ongoing tale. They would continue to face challenges, whether it was the antics of a new pet, the schemes of an ambitious neighbor, or the simple day-to-day struggle of navigating a society that often seemed at odds with their mountain sensibilities. Yet, they would do so together with laughter and an unwavering sense of purpose. For the Clampetts, the path home was always clear, and it led back to the love and laughter that defined their life, whether in a cabin in the woods or a mansion in the hills. And so, the sun set on their Washington adventure, leaving behind a legacy of goodwill, a few millions saved, and the indelible memory of a family that, despite all appearances, knew exactly what mattered most in this life. It was a story of hope, a story of humbleness, and above all, a story of a family that remained, through every twist and turn, the very essence of a home. The gentle breeze of the Ozark Mountains carried the scent of pine and wild honeysuckle, a far cry from the bustling, concrete-laden atmosphere that Jethro had recently been trying to navigate in his mind. For the Clampett family, life in Beverly Hills had been a peculiar series of adventures, but today, the air felt thick with a sense of purpose. Jed Clampett sat on the porch of his sprawling mansion. His eyes squinted thoughtfully at the distant horizon, while Granny rocked rhythmically in her chair, a bowl of fresh vegetables in her lap. Elmer, a small and spirited raccoon, scurried about the interior of a nearby cabinet, making quick work of the dust bunnies that had dared to settle there. Jethro, ever the eager nephew, watched him with wide-eyed fascination. It was a handy little critter, Jed observed, noting that the raccoon fur seemed to work better than any store-bought feather duster for picking up lint. Jethro beamed, proud of his unconventional cleaning assistant. The two of them soon moved their efforts outdoors, shaking out the dusters under the bright California sun, preparing to tackle the upstairs rooms with a sense of duty that only a Clampett could muster. Inside the quietude of the house, a lingering topic resurfaced. Uncle Jed, old Honest John, had not yet returned to collect his $700,000. The money sat an intimidating figure in the house. Jethro, ever the pragmatist regarding his 50-cent weekly allowance, had already begun to dream of how an advance on his earnings might bridge the gap between him and a fortune, though Jed reminded him gently that he was still quite young and that some debts were meant to be handled with care. The conversation shifted to a cause that had captured Jethro's imagination: the fight against smog. He had heard that victory in this battle required two things: brains and money. Looking at the resources at hand, Jed chuckled softly. If those were the requirements, they were certainly well equipped. The idea of contributing to such a noble cause warmed the hearts of the family. However, the world outside their gates was far more complicated than the hills back home. Mr. Drysdale, their ever-anxious banker, had called with a sense of urgency, concerned about the safety of such a vast sum of cash being kept in a residence. He had, quite literally, developed the hives from the sheer stress of it all. Granny, unimpressed by the banker's ailments, remained firm in her resolve. A promise was a promise, and she had pledged that money to support the fight against the air pollution that plagued the city. Jethro, catching her fire, decided that he too would become a warrior in this environmental crusade. He lacked a clear plan, but he possessed the unshakable confidence of a young man who believed that if one had the resources, one could move mountains. As the day progressed, the household became a theater of the absurd. Mr. Drysdale, desperate to recover the funds for the bank's vault, attempted to stage a recovery mission that involved disguises and security guards. Miss Jane, ever the loyal secretary, found herself caught in the crossfire of her boss's panic, forced into a uniform that did little to soothe the tension. The situation, while chaotic, remained anchored by the simple, unwavering honesty of the Clampetts, who viewed the bank president's agitation with a mixture of confusion and mild amusement. Jethro, meanwhile, had taken his commitment to the smog cause to the next level. In his mind, the problem was purely mechanical. He spent his hours in the garage, tinkering with various contraptions, convinced that he could revolutionize the way vehicles operated. He spoke of steam engines and electric motors with the fervor of a pioneer, despite the fact that he was still learning what an internal combustion engine actually was. To Jethro, the world was a puzzle to be solved, and he was determined to be the one to fit the final piece. The family's journey toward their goal eventually took them from the quiet of their estate to the halls of power. Word had reached them that the path to solving the smog problem required the attention of the highest office in the land. The President of the United States, they were told, was the only one who could command the necessary resources. With their hearts set on Washington, the Clampetts prepared for an odyssey. They were not merely going on a trip. They were going to deliver the solution to one of the nation's greatest challenges. In the midst of their planning, the complexity of the outside world often threatened to obscure their simple intentions. They navigated through bureaucracies, misunderstood warnings from well-meaning but confused officials, and dealt with characters like Honest John, whose motives were not always as transparent as the clear mountain springs of their youth. Yet, through every encounter, the core of the Clampett spirit remained intact. They were guided by a deep-seated belief in helping their fellow man, in keeping their word, and in the fundamental goodness of the world. As they finally stood on the threshold of their national capital, the scale of their ambition became clear. They were not just a family of mountaineers anymore. They were citizens who truly cared about the future of their environment. Every step they took, from buying iconic landmarks to trying to secure an audience with the president, was fueled by a desire to leave the world better than they found it. Their humor, their sincerity, and their unwavering loyalty to one another served as a constant beacon in a sea of complexity. In the end, it was not the millions of dollars or the grand schemes that truly defined their time in Washington. It was the simple human moments, the quiet laughter over a shared meal, the genuine curiosity of Jethro as he explored the wonders of technology, and the steady, guiding hand of Jed as he steered his family through the labyrinth of politics. They had arrived with nothing but their principles and their humor, and they left, having touched the lives of everyone they met, leaving behind a legacy of kindness that even the tallest monuments in the city could not overshadow. The mountain air might have been far away, but they had carried the spirit of the hills with them, proving that no matter where they went, they were always fundamentally themselves. In the hills of the Ozarks, where the air is sweet and clean, there lived a man named Jed Clampett who was as simple and honest as the day is long. He was a mountaineer of the old sort, a man who kept his family fed by the grace of the land and his own two hands. One morning, as he was out seeking game to put food on the table, the ground beneath his feet gave a sudden, strange rumble, and up through the soil bubbled a thick, dark liquid. It was oil, and for the simple folk of the mountains it was black gold, a fortune that would change their lives forever. His kinfolk told him it was time to move, that California was the place for a man of his new standing, and so they loaded up their truck and headed west to the bright lights of Beverly Hills. Life in the big city was a whirlwind of swimming pools and movie stars, but Jed and his kin remained the same simple folk they had always been. One fine day, while the family was busy helping Granny with the house cleaning, a strange little creature named Elmer, which Jethro had decided was the perfect tool for dusting, was scurrying about inside a cabinet. Jed looked on with a chuckle, remarking that the little critter was a dandy way to get the work done. They were enjoying the simplicity of their chores when the quiet of the morning was interrupted by talk of money, a great sum of $700,000 that an old fellow named Honest John had left behind. Jed was a man who believed